conversation is we don't believe there is a need for 3 off-street parking stalls. I know the staff report talks about it. I know the Public Safety Department talks about the need, but we have strict covenants that we put in place that say people can park by the amenity lot, can't park at the amenity lot. They do have to walk, and it's enforced. So we don't think that 3 off-street parking stalls are necessary. So I hope when you get into this, that conversation happens. The variance, I think the variance 1 with the 7.5 and 7.5 versus 5 and 10, and Natalie presented it appropriately. It's the same 15 feet, 7.5 and 7.5 gives the builders a little more flexibility when they put a house in, garage right, garage left, as opposed to everything having to be all on the same side. Because if you do a 5 and a 10, garage is always on the, let's say, the right side or the left side. You don't get variations. Can't promise you will anyway, but 7.5 and 7.5 provide more flexibility in the future for builders and future homeowners to put the garage on either side.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How is this a hardship?
Granted, it's a hardship, and I tried to explain it in the narrative. It's a hardship because it reduces the flexibility that future builders and homeowners have in placing the house. I get it, I get it, but to me, 7.5 and 7.5 is becoming the standard in other communities. And I think even at the council, when we went through the concept, not to speak for them, but they somewhat agreed with the idea that maybe we go through a variance at this point, but the ordinance gets changed in the future.
I get you. My only concern is that city code states that a hardship cannot be caused by the developer or the landowner. So how is this a hardship?
I can make something up. I believe the hardship is because
well, I appreciate the honesty.
We've got a lot of wetlands in here.
Okay.
And the flexibility and the need of the wetlands.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's fine. No, that's fine. I appreciate the questions, absolutely. Okay. Variance 2 to the 55 or 55% ground elevation. We just think we can provide a better quality house if you allow us to have larger garages, with the caveat that we have 2 stories above it. So from the streetscape, there still appears to be a large amount of house versus garage. I think the ordinance probably was put into place many years ago to prevent the snout houses. These aren't anywhere close to that type of a house. These are 2-story, large homes, 3 and 4 car garages. And again, if you drove through Hollydale, yes, you'd see the garages, but the reality is they don't dominate the front of these houses.
So would you agree with me that instead of a variance, perhaps a zoning ordinance amendment would better address this?
I think both, the first variance and the second one, absolutely. But reality is, because we're in the middle of an application, to get the application moving.
Fair enough.
But
Fair
absolutely,
enough.
I think that, I don't disagree with that. So variance 3, this is the buffer landscaping. So what we're asking for, in short, is no changes along here. We're okay with everything here. It really is up here along the north property line and the east property line. There's a difference between the north and the east property lines. There is a large amount of existing trees just off the property on the north property line. On the east property line, there's a large number of trees off the property, but there's also trees along the property line on this property side that will be saved. So what we're asking for, and the reason that's an issue up on the north end is the concern that if we put more trees up there, or a lot more trees, that the competition of the trees and the best management practices of how you grow quality trees will be affected because you'll have too many trees fighting for the same sunlight, if you will. So our concern is not putting landscaping in. We put landscaping in all of our developments. Landscaping does help us. It sells product and everything. Our concern isn't too much. Will it actually survive? And at the end of the day, will we all be happy 5, 10 years from now with the quality of the trees that are going up? So what we're asking here is not to get rid of it all, but is there a possibility to reduce some of the numbers up there? On the east side,
And are you asking for a reduction in the numbers because you're being told by an expert that those plantings will die? Or that trees will die? I thought I saw something about someone telling
yes,
you.
our landscape architect,
Yeah, there's a caveat on the landscaping plan. Note to the contractor, these buffer quantities are required by city ordinance, and it should be noted they are not recommended by the landscape architect. The quantity and spacing may be in conflict with best management practices.
so our landscape architecture has come out and said that to us. And
Fair
she
enough.
put it on the plan because she wanted to make sure people are aware that it wasn't her that put it in place.
Sure.
So that's the north, right? On the east side, it's a little bit different. Detail B is what we propose to landscape. And again, we've shown it at what the code requirements. North of there and a little bit south of there, we don't show anything because we do feel there's some large trees that we are preserving on the site that meet the ordinance as far as an exemption. Again, we think that there's probably too many trees in there in detail B, and if we could get some reduction in that, that would be helpful for the long-term health of those trees.
Have you identified for staff which trees would stay and which would go?
So, good questions. The answer is yes, to a limit, and I say that because we measure trees, so the surveyor goes out and trees and measures any tree over 8 inches in diameter or caliper inch. There are probably another 25 to 30 between 4 inches and 8 inches that are in there that are saved that aren't surveyed. It's not the standard practice to call and survey those. You kind of can see it, but then there's also a lot of lower trees that are growing up that are caught, that in the summertime will create a buffer.
Okay.
So, yes, but not every 2-inch tree or buffer is surveyed. So that's what we're asking for in the variance for the landscaping. As far as the 4 resolutions, again, the comp plan resolution we support, the rezoning we support, understand the preliminary plat, the variance request we support for the 7.5, the 55s, and ask for some discussion and flexibility on the landscaping to meet the buffer. Staff will certainly is going to continue to work with your engineering staff and your planning staff to meet the requirements that they put in there with the various letters, and hopefully we'll come forward through this process with a project that meets your expectations as well as our expectations.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Can I ask, are
Sure.
we able to ask you further questions?
Sure. Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead.
I was going to ask you, who is your target customer, consumer of these products? Homes.
Most likely they're going to be second, third-time buyers. Families. I mean, if the example is our Hollydale community, a lot of families, second, third time. Surprisingly, there's a lot of families with elementary age kids moving in there, but if you go to the second, third time, you're looking at high school as well. Don't like pinpointing an exact price range, but those in Hollydale, same school district, I don't know if we've gotten too many less than $1 million. And that's why I question where people with families can afford them, but that's not for me to decide.
Okay, thank you. And ideally, you know, the multiple builders, and attracting multiple builders, I think is great. How many builders ideally would be the goal to have?
So right now that hasn't been decided. To be honest with you, it could be one builder, but they have such a variety. Could be 2 builders. In the narrative, there's 2 different builders plans shown.
Yeah.
Generally, you get more than that, and there's not enough for a builder to truly market a project. It's only 60 lots, so we can't have 5, 6, 7 builders in there because the builders
Right.
can't get enough traction. So chances are it's probably going to be 1 or 2 builders. to give
If I
them
could,
solid traction.
I would like to end the public.
We haven't actually opened the public forum yet. This is just the applicant giving his narrative, like giving his talk. So if
You are
members of the
correct, so
public
there's
want to
nothing
speak.
for me to close.
Nope, not yet, but we need to begin.
All right. So don't go away.
I haven't left.
Okay, with that, I'd like to open the public hearing. And anyone here have any comments?
Yes.
All right, and please just state your name and your address if you're a resident.
Sure. My name is Fred Benkuski, and I live at 6215 Hackmore Circle, which would be right wherever that minute.
Okay.
Get back up to that. So you said he wants to go from a 2
Hey,
to a
folks,
3, right?
folks,
At RF.
I can only listen to one, thanks. I'm
That
sorry, go ahead.
means if he does that, you could put multiple home, I think it states in the code that they can have single-family homes and multiple family homes. If you go to a 3.
Are you talking about density?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, so if he gets 3 builders, let's say, and they buy those 3 lots, or 4 lots, and this guy says, well, I'm gonna put bungalows in there. Can you do that? Because
We,
it says multiple family.
we will note the question, and once public forum is closed, then we'll give staff a chance to address any questions that came up.
And there seems to be a lot of variances, you know, I mean, we need a variance for this, we need a variance for that. The width, if you want to see what a 65-foot lot looks like, go to Edina, to the teardown section, and see their houses. They all end up to be 51, 52, 53 feet. They need a variance because they gotta have 3-car garages, they gotta have the little office space, they gotta have that little porch. So I'm not sure about all the variances. My next question is, if you put, he's gonna put a swimming pool right next to my lot, right? So you're gonna walk down this hill, down this road, down that cul-de-sac to get to that pool. If you drive down to the site, no mother is gonna take their 5, 6-year-old kid from up here and walk down to there. She's gonna drive them down here. So where are they gonna park? They're either gonna park in this cul-de-sac, or they're gonna park in this cul-de-sac and walk the new path to get to the pool. What time does the pool open and what time does it close? You know, am I gonna have noise? Am I gonna have things like that? He mentioned the wetland. I'm not an expert about wetlands, but you guys just redid Hackmore Road. And I believe if you check with the contractor, they got drainage going down to where he wants to fill in your wetland. I'm not sure though, you'd have to check with the contractor. And the buffer zone, you're gonna add water to this. Because all the drainage from the road project all goes into that pond. So I don't know if they checked with the city about the city engineers and the contractor on the road. Because we're getting water from Medina across the street. Goes underneath the street, through this culvert. The culvert ends about it right here and goes into that pond. I know that pond then drains back to Plymouth on Hackmore and 101. That's where that is. But if he's gonna build these 50-foot houses on these 65-foot lots, they're gonna be right next to each other. They're not building small houses, they're building big houses. Don't you think they should have a big lot? I mean, 80 feet isn't much. I know he wants to make money. I realize that. And I know when they sold the property that they were gonna put houses there. I knew that, but they were gonna be single-family 80-foot lots. But now, we're asking for variances. You know, and a lot of variances. It's just not 1 or 2. Every time they build a house, they're gonna have to have a variance. And the thing that I read on the website was when it goes from the single-family 2s to 3s, it says multiple family housing. So that's what concerns me.
all
And
right.
if he's gonna have 3 contractors in there and they're gonna buy so many lots,
All right,
It isn't like he's building a house.
Yep, understood. So just for the sake of time,
Yeah.
I'll give you 15 more seconds.
Okay. But, and like I said, you tell me how you're gonna walk from here to there.
Probably
kids.
with my feet.
Yeah, but I don't know if mom's gonna do that.
Well, then mom has that prerogative.
Okay.
So, all right, thank you.
I got nothing other than I don't like it.
Okay, fair enough. Please state your name and your address.
Good evening. Yeah, it's Jonathan Schmidt, 6340 County Road 116. So I may have, I don't want to compete with this gentleman here, but I might have the most vested interest to be able to bring up the map again. I have the one house in that top corner lot, surrounded, fully surrounded almost by this development. So we, there we are. So we moved here about 2 years ago. I actually bought it from my father-in-law, who's lived there for 30 plus years, owns Hannah Lumber. We wanted the land, we wanted the space for our kids, 2 twin daughters. And so much so that I love nature so much that I joined the Parks and Trails Commission here last November, just because I love the city. And I can understand that there's probably not much we can do about it going in general, but I think we'll probably become good friends in this partnership because I've got a lot of questions. So I think before I get into the questions, I need to make sure that this is the appropriate time to actually ask some of the questions, but I do have about 20 questions, and
Yep, now would not be the
that's
time.
not going to work. So what would you recommend is the best way to have those
Yeah,
be
well,
heard?
if you have 20 questions, if you want to prioritize 1 or 2,
Which I did.
and
yeah.
we'll do our best,
Okay.
but really, it's not for us to answer questions, and we
Right.
typically refer questions to staff. So here is what I would prefer. I would prefer that you submit your 20 questions to the city and await a response. And I will ask staff to make sure that your questions and the answers are attached to the application that gets submitted to the city council. Is that fair?
Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
that's fair. And so directly to city council, not to Steve here or any part of the development team?
Natalie, how would you prefer that?
Well, just to clarify, so I think sending them to staff is fair, and you could even send it to, you could copy Steve, certainly.
Sure.
And then I would say if you have like concerns, like a few questions now could certainly be answered. You typically don't have a back and forth.
Sure.
But I do try, after the public hearing's closed, I do try to address questions that I have immediate responses to. So we definitely don't want to turn down your questions, but if it is a long list,
Yeah.
it might be something better that we have time to compile that information for
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. So absolutely. So, I will just give this, and then this will at least give you guys an idea of kind of where my mind is at on some of the questions. This, like I said, we're not going through all these, right?
Sure.
But I just want to share these with you. I didn't get as many copies for everybody.
That's
but
fine.
Nonetheless, I think, I'm also representing the neighbor to the north there. He couldn't be here tonight. I'd say one of the biggest concerns that we have here is really the drainage. So we're very appreciative that we're keeping this wetland. It's actually absolutely beautiful and gorgeous and keep that, so wonderful there. Back behind here though, and you'll see it on the very front of that packet that I gave you, back behind here, it's actually about a 40-foot drop. You can see there's a wetland under here, and it comes down and then it comes way up as it comes back to this. So really currently a lot of the water drains right into there, up through here, and then onto the neighbor's property. So what I guess my biggest concern is, well, for one, all the vegetation that is here, it's unfortunate that would be just gone. So, I mean, obviously there's any way to move these further out and preserve some of the natural, the natural barrier there, I guess, would be appreciated, but it's not looking like it here. But really the concern is when this drain, I guess, where will this water go? that typically drains off to that side, that's clear there. But then what typically drains north of here and off of my property onto this, you know, how are we accommodating for that? So if you do look on page, like I said, this will just be the main concern that I have today. If you look on page 2 there, you can see a side picture. I'm standing about right here, looking this way. And you can see how much it comes down from my property up there on the top left, and then, you know, goes back up. So, and then the other picture there on page 2 is I'm standing here at the bottom, facing this way up. So it's a hill. So what I'm curious about is, are they filling all of this in to be level? You know, is this a level plain right here? Everything gets filled in, and now our runoff is to go, I guess, where? You know, into all their backyards, or how does that work?
Yeah, no, your questions are for us, not for the applicant, okay? So if you have that question, again, feel free to submit it to staff.
Okay.
And the staff, I know, will get back to you in a timely manner. And I think I heard you say, are you on the Parks and Trails, or?
Yep.
And do you anticipate hearing input about this property?
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, if I were you,
talked last-
I would recuse myself, because I think you have a conflict of interest.
Okay. Would it be for this one topic?
Mr. Chair, the the Parks and Trails Commission purview is specifically to the park dedication. So they already did make that recommendation.
Okay,
and
good.
I
Only
don't
because
believe
I-
it was a conflict. so.
Only because I heard the gentleman say, and we're going to have a lot of questions for you. And I'm just concerned about that.
Sure, no, I totally hear you, but I think the Parks and Trails Commission, their purview is very limited in scope.
Okay, fair
and
enough.
And so I don't think that was a conflict, so you're hearing.
Good to check, and I did check with them too, but yeah, thank you. So really, I think that's one of the biggest things, and just the preservation of some of those really majestic, massive trees that are on the whole lot, not just my space. There's 2 huge ones here that you can see on the back side there. Home to the nice Falcon family. So
Understood.
It's just those types of things.
We appreciate your comments.
Yeah.
We've gone well over the time.
All right.
I do appreciate your comments. I'm not trying to give you the bum's rush, but
Totally
it is
understand.
getting late.
So,
Okay?
All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So with that, can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Mr. Chair, could I speak to the first gentleman's question about
RS,
two-family lots?
yeah.
Okay.
About?
The two-family lots, like two-family, like for two-family homes? Okay.
Yes, yes.
So just to clarify, the zoning district does allow for two-family homes. That is accurate. So if you look on the screen here, two-family homes have a minimum lot width requirement of 100 feet. None of these lots, I think maybe one lot had a 100-foot lot width, so they would require replatting as a single lot to do a two-family home, or for most of these lots. A, B, and I'd have to look, there might not have been a 100-foot lot width, there may, up to one is what I can recall, maybe having a 100-foot lot width. And then there is an HOA that the applicant is proposing. So as currently proposed, this is a single-family development that would be under HOA covenants. I think that the applicant would have to speak to it, but I think two-family homes would be a fairly big departure from a single-family HOA, but he can certainly speak to that as well.
I think I'm all on board. I don't know, do you guys need the applicant to speak to that point? Or can we just keep moving forward? That's my
Well,
question.
you-
I'm sold. No two-family homes
Well,
or
here's-
multifamily.
You can sit down for a second. I guess what I'd like to do, this is a pretty large application, and what we've done in the past, as you know, we've broken down the application into the key requests. And in this case, I think the key requests are the comp plan amendment, zoning to RSF3, the preliminary plat, and then finally the variances. Am I correct, Natalie? Okay. So what I would like to do is, I'd like to break the application down into those 4 separate asks, and that we focus on each one instead of just going all over and trying to get our arms around it. So I would suggest that we start with the comp plan amendment. Who would like to start, or does anyone have comments about the comp plan amendment?
I approve it.
I approve too.
So you
I don't need to
would
have any discussion. I'm in
recommend-
favor.
Okay, all right, so no discussion.
Correct, I'm in favor.
Do I understand that that allows for less density per acre?
Yes.
As long as you meet the density required?
Within the MUSA overall, this would, yes.
So I guess my only comment is that I think we've had a couple of amendments to our comp plan recently. And a plan is not really a plan if we just kind of do what we want, any which way. But here, I do agree with staff, and I am in favor of the amendment. I think that it will provide diversity in housing options across Corcoran. There's no question that Corcoran is rapidly expanding. Additionally, we're not like older cities like St. Paul and Stillwater that have housing in neighborhoods that have been built across time. So to that end, I think it is a good thing that this comp plan amendment will ensure that our growth has options, which is what I think this is offering the city, has options available for home buyers and developers. Would you like us to make motions and vote on each of the 4?
certainly could, yes.
So with that, I'll make a motion to approve the comp plan amendment. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Anyone want to discuss the zoning to RSF3?
Isn't it zoning, okay, perhaps there needs to be a clarification. Is it rezoning to RSF2 or RSF3?
It's rezoning to RSF3. Currently, it's zoned RSF2.
Yep.
And then it's also adjusting some of the verbiage within RSF3 to account for the.
To
new
accommodate the
comp.
very low density.
Yes.
I would love to kick off. And I'm super glad to see that we have multiple members of council here tonight as well to listen.
Do you want
And-
something, or you're just
Nope,
saying hi?
nope, I'm
Or-
just saying I'm glad you're here because I think, there's just been a lot of really important discussions happening with the city right now. And I think that if I think back to particularly maybe Jay or Mr. Tobin's comment when it was approved of the Hope Community Church development, providing opportunity for higher density in certain areas of the city will allow for lower density in others. Also, the burden of proof, hardship required to particularly make an adjustment to our city plan needs to be demonstrated, and other than the effectiveness to add lots and profitability and feasibility of more lots to this development, I don't see particularly hardship evidence to justify making this change to our overall city direction and strategy. I think we're in a really important time where we're setting precedents, we're setting our strategy as a city, we're setting the tone for how we are going to be adjusting. And this is not a PUD. So we have an opportunity to think really hard about this and why we would do this. And for those reasons, I particularly would like to hear if anybody is for this, and maybe I can understand that a bit more, because right now my stance would be that I don't see why, particularly other than for the developer's interest, we would move to 3.
I believe it's so that we can meet an overall density of the city. So it is not to cater to the developer. It is to cater to the fact that we are being held to a requirement regarding density. And so in order to do that on this particular lot, because we look at it as a development by development basis is how that calculation is made. So in order to meet that at this particular development, it needs to be rezoned. And you can correct me if I'm
I
wrong.
don't think that's true.
So just to clarify, there isn't a hardship standard for rezoning.
Okay.
That is for variances, you're correct. There's a practical
Okay.
difficulty standard. So it's a little different than hardship. It used to be hardship. Legislation was changed to change the threshold to be practical difficulties in complying with the ordinance. So the zoning ordinance amendment to RSF3, I do agree to be able to, right now, the pre-density is coming back at 2 units an acre. Granted, that could go up slightly, but a drastic change to that is not anticipated. And to move to a minimum 80-foot lot width requirement, we're talking about even lower than 2 units an acre. So I think to be able to continue to minimize deviation from our comp plan amendment while still allowing for a lower density to be had in the city within the MUSA area. I think RSF3, and it does say in the purpose of RSF3, it is intended to be the primary district for new development, new single-family home development within the city. Within the MUSA. So I think it would be very difficult for them to meet density requirements with that 80-foot lot width requirement and the larger lot size requirement with RSF2.
Are we saying the overall density requirement of the city?
I'm saying right now, the comp plan amendment would allow for density at 2 to 3 units an acre, and at RSF3 standards, it's coming in at 2 units an acre. So if we move to RSF2 standards, it'll be even lower than that. So it's both here and as the city overall, to be able to make sure that we are not counting our eggs before they're hatched in terms of density being granted elsewhere. That's allowing for some deviation in our plan now, and then staff does want to take a closer look at all of this with our 2050 update, but right now it's a very narrowed scope.
Yeah, because I was wondering, the approval of Hope Community and these large apartments, like how is that changing our strategy and our plan as a city? And if we're saying yes to every single opportunity to build smaller lots, like how are we looking at the overall calculation and how it's fluctuating and changing as we're making these decisions?
Additional density is anticipated with Hope, very strongly anticipated. Again, I want to be careful of counting eggs before they hatch. We have not seen a final plat. I do hope that some numbers will be available for our 2050 update in terms of being able to count some of those final plats towards our calculations. I think that we have enough reason to move forward with a proposal or two coming in at 2 to 3 units an acre, but I do think we need to be very mindful as to which projects get that change at this time. Again, it's just a very narrow scope. When you start pulling at strings, sometimes more come. So I would say that I think that the goals that I keep hearing from our city council, so we would like to allow for lower density development. I think that does this. And I would say it's very telling that even with RSF3 standards, it's coming in at 2 units an acre.
I would also like to note that the location of this particular property, being at the crossroads of 2 major roadways, isn't necessarily the place. I think it makes a nice transition from some of those, I don't know what we were calling them a while ago, but those established kind of rural neighborhoods. And what's across 116 from it, which is like a significant number of row homes, right? So it is in terms of making making sense transition. I think it's a place to be. If we're going to shoot for the stars and make some kind of on the line decision about where we're going to come in under 2, I don't know that this is the location to do that. In terms of the clientele that would be buying homes like that or be affording, do you know what I'm saying? Like you're at a busy intersection, and so if you're going to make that argument for a really a neighborhood with really, really wide lots and all that sort of stuff, is this the location even to put those? Do you know what I'm saying? Okay, thank you. It's 9:30, so the language is not coming as eloquently.
I
But I'm
understand
just
what
saying,
you're
I think that where this is, the transition and the type of neighborhoods that's already surrounded, it makes sense to go to the RSF3. So I would be in support of making that amendment, or that change.
Well, with the comprehensive plan amendment, I do not have any issue with rezoning to RSF3, especially since the minimums have been met or exceeded. And with that, I will make a motion to recommend rezoning to RSF.
And I would second.
Okay, we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye. Nay.
Nay.
I know, right? It's the double negative. Yeah.
Okay. All right, and then if we can move to the preliminary plat. Any discussion on that piece?
The only question that I had is that here is a situation where we have a road on road. And I know that that has come up before. There is the neighborhood off of Bass Lake Road, just past Cook Lake Highlands, where again, we have a road on road, where, right? So and I guess I'm bringing it up in the preliminary plat just because that addresses kind of where the lots are. I believe that for future residents, it would be far more beneficial to be on the side of the road that it's platted, right? Or the side of that cul-de-sac, rather than making the homes abut Hackamore, you know what I mean? And then pushing them. So I think it makes sense. I'm just wondering if there is going to be any additional lands, like what is it gonna look like in that space between the road and the road? Because I think there's a walking trail, am I correct?
It's not
Okay.
completed, but there's a-
Right.
And I think the plan shows that the road, this road butts right up to it. But he could answer that.
Yeah, if you could.
Yeah.
I know we have those big boulders. That's the neighborhood that I'm talking about, just just past Corcoran, yeah. And that's kind of what shields that
That's
road
the-
on
that's
road
the
view.
north end.
Oh, I thought we were talking.
Oh, no, you're right.
Okay, all right.
So we do show extensive landscaping between that road and the trail in Hackamore. Not that it's a perfect example, because they planted them towards the end of the year. You go about a half a mile east on Hackamore 47. I've never been able to pronounce what they've changed it to, so I'm going to keep it at 47. If you go about a half a mile in there, in Plymouth, they have got a fairly similar example. In that case, there's, I think, 8 homes. Our landscaping is more intensive than them, but I also think at the end of the day, it's a straight shot parallel with 60 or parallel with Hackamore.
Hackamore.
Is it 62nd too?
Yes.
Hackamore 62nd?
62nd?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we
That's
call it
just the first
Hackamore,
time I've
though.
noticed
Yeah.
62nd there. So they're parallel, so I don't think there's a need to block headlights, if you will. The landscaping will have a nice buffer, but I also think if you saw that, if you looked at those pictures of the houses, the front elevations of those houses are so nice that I think from Hackamore, it would be a very, very nice streetscape.
Okay.
So, but we do show shrubs, lower level, plus a lot of evergreen trees along.
Okay, and so that's what breaks that up. That was
Yeah.
just my question regarding that. And I don't think, I have a lot of other questions, and I'm just not sure where they fit in as we break it down this way. And not questions, but we can get to that, I guess, whenever we do.
Was a traffic study conducted, or is that?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't see any info about that.
Traffic study and infrastructure feasibility study was completed. Typically, the engineering memo will touch on that. No, let's see here. But yeah, let me see if I can get to the engineering memo real quick. That was where the emergency access was discussed in terms of city wanted it evaluated whether it made sense to have a connection to 116 now, but through working with Hennepin County, they are not allowing for that connection at this time. They did allow for a public emergency access. So that's shown on the west side of the project.
Right here.
But because, yeah, I think there really are no improvements that are, offsite improvements that are required of this development because we're already updating Hackamore Road as a city. And then they don't have any direct access to County Road 116 at this time. So that will fall on a development whenever the north is redeveloped, the properties to the north are redeveloped.
I bring this up to note that the public comment that was sent via email expressed concern around traffic in this area, so I also didn't read that part, so thank you.
Natalie, you wrote that one of the 2 wetlands would be removed. Has that been approved by the DNR?
So there's 2 small wetlands that I believe are going to be a non-issue because they were farmed wetlands.
It's the one in the southwest corner.
Yeah, and then the southwest one, that is part, actually, we're having a discussion with engineering and our wetland specialist and the applicant tomorrow, so I don't believe that has been approved. That I think is what he was talking about in terms of any help that planning commission can provide, but it's a little out of your purview because it is up to.
It is, unfortunately, sorry.
So,
I had to ask.
it's a fair question.
The one thing that I will point out that I don't think it fits in this, and it's actually not directed really for the applicant at all. I just wanted to highlight it, that on page 7 of the staff report, under, I don't even know what its original number is here if I flip back, but it's basically D on page 7. It indicates that the applicant indicated that the development will have a homeowners association, which will be required by the city with the proposed outlots, And the reason that I want to bring that up is this has been a concern as we move forward trying to preserve green space, is that it's actually requiring homeowners associations. And so if someone wanted to live in Corcoran and not live in a homeowners association neighborhood, they're significantly limited to where they can move. And so I just want to note it because you guys are here, that I think obviously the intent of it is wonderful. I mean, if we can preserve environmental, but if it is requiring a homeowners association, I would ask that that be something that's reconsidered. Just because HOAs can be used as a factor for exclusion in terms of home buyers. So I feel like it has been HOA heavy. So I just wanted to make that note, not for you, not that I want to change it for this particular neighborhood, but I wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, if I could comment, I don't think we have the authority to make that recommendation.
Well, the only reason I'm bringing it up is that one of you'll have better language around it. I can already tell it because you've got it in your eyes. But it's, as we move forward, we're trying to tip the scales in terms of promoting and encouraging reservation of open space. But when you have that open space that's not owned by individuals because you opt for smaller lot sizes and larger open areas, through our city code, that is, someone has to maintain those outlots or that open space and preservation area. And by default, then that becomes a homeowners association. And so because that is something that originated through city code, that's the only reason I'm highlighting it. I'm not asking necessarily for an amendment, but I'm just continuing to highlight the fact that something that is well intended is perhaps having an unintended consequence.
A question?
Is that something that would be addressed in the comp plan?
No.
So if I can, Mr. Chair, to be clear, so basically the alternative would be for the applicant to draw the lot lines over, completely over the wetlands. So that is an option. It's not that the city is ultimately because they're preserving these wetland spaces, they have to have an HOA. It's because they're showing them in outlots. That's the best way to protect the city's interests, is to have these HOA. Otherwise, without them having, with an outlot without an HOA, the likelihood of it going tax forfeit is very high. So that's what's triggering the HOA. Hopefully, some rest assured to you, Planning Commissioner, is that was the applicant's intent since the concept plan to have an HOA. That was not so this is just because they're having an HOA, it's fine. So it wasn't something that, well, if you're going to do it this way, you're going to have an HOA, and then they were talking about implementing it.
Sure, it was more in the standards that we just recently passed, where, so anyway, if it wasn't applicable to this one.
The PUD standards?
Correct, yep.
Space,
so the
sure.
only reason that I'm addressing it in this case is because it happened to be an opportunity to highlight it, not because it was relative at all to the applicant in question tonight.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question to the developer?
Sure, please.
Regarding the pool, you know, and its position and its accessibility to residents, and the parking is certainly a concern for a lot of people. Is there another place to put it, or what, or is there, why a pool versus another type of amenity? I'm curious kind of the story there. There's a lot there,
Yeah,
but.
there, Chair and Commissioners, there is a lot there. Let's see if I can answer them. I'm not going to answer them succinctly. I'll just answer the questions as they come into my mind. Pool versus something else. From our experience, this price point, a pool is an amenity that the homeowners like.
Okay.
Okay, so that's why a pool. Different location, absolutely. The issue is, when we originally came with our sketch plan, that cul-de-sac bubble on the southeast corner, we had it smaller, so we could have had another lot or two. The city asked that it be a full-size cul-de-sac. Understand why, for emergency vehicles, so we expanded the cul-de-sac, which reduced the depth of that parcel. That parcel can no longer be built as a single-family home, so it made sense, if we're going to have an amenity lot, that one makes, that one seemed appropriate because of the size of it. Could it go somewhere else? Sure, but we'll lose a lot. And I honestly don't know what that does to density.
Outlot E is in the center of the development, and it looks like it has a
Lot
fair
of-
amount of space
Yeah.
by outlot. I
It's
think
a
that's
lot of
outlot
slope
E.
in there.
Yeah.
That center outlot, there's a lot of topography there, getting from the
Buffer.
roads down to the wetland.
I will say, if we're just addressing the parking for that pool house, it reminds me very much of a neighborhood in Plymouth that's off of Vicksburg and 55 or 55th Place. And similar, although that neighborhood is huge, and their pool house for that neighborhood is right at the entrance. So it reminded me of that in terms of this, only because it's not centrally located. It is at one end of the development or the other. The way that they accommodated parking was just to have I'm going to use the wrong word, but the curb in, right? Okay, off the street. So, but I'm reminded that we don't need to make this a huge deal, because a pool is open probably from Memorial Day to Labor Day. So 3 months out of the year, 3/4 of the year, this isn't going to be a huge deal. I guess I would be in favor. There is parking there. I do think that people will park. I think that anybody who lives probably more than 10 houses away is going to want to drive. So I would be in favor of kind of what staff proposed, if there's a way to create the 3 parking spots there. And then maybe bike racks. You know, let's encourage folks to bike to the.
I say bike racks.
There you go. That's an idea.
But anyway, those are my thoughts regarding parking.
Anything else?
I think more parking there is probably not necessary, especially if you're not supposed to drive there. It's supposed to be walkable. It's supposed to be in the neighborhood. Kids can bike. Let the kids bike.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to approve the preliminary plat. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Nay, yes, okay. Nay, you got the double negative corrected. Okay, and I think that leaves us with variances, correct? So, I guess in my view, the variance requests that are rolled into the application are the most difficult part for me. It seems that these asks are very much like those that the commission heard in the PUD context, where these items would be packaged as flexibility. My instincts tell me that they should be approved, and I indeed think that the asks make a lot of sense. But PUD flexibility is not the standard to apply here, because there is no PUD. However, that is one of the things that I do appreciate about this application. The rezoning application cuts directly to what it should be. So, Natalie, I see one of your suggestions is that these variance requests should really be a zoning amendment, and I agree with that. So in a bit, Natalie, I'm going to ask you to describe what that process would look like. Is it simply a request to the applicant to recast their request as a zoning ordinance amendment? Also, because it's so close to a PUD flexibility request, won't changes to the zoning ordinances need to be made anyway after the PUDs move from PUD to their underlying zoning? So I guess what I'm asking is that wouldn't this be a solution to modifying now what we would need to modify in the future anyway? Briefly, with regard to the side setbacks, I'd like to tackle one thing here is this 7.5-foot side setback. My comment on this is that if I were a homeowner, it would be good for my senses to have my property lines the same on both sides, especially when mowing. And as staff noted, this is really a distinction without a difference. But I also am not clear whether the property's boundaries are enough to show a hardship, especially since homes will still be 15 feet apart either way. So for that, Natalie, in your view, is this a zoning ordinance amendment that provides 7.5-foot side setbacks as an option, or in lieu of the current arrangement, 10-foot on garage side, 5-foot on living space side? And I guess, ultimately I could be swayed either way on that point. With respect to the garage door percentage, I agree with staff that this doesn't seem to me to meet the variance standards. It's a tall, or should I say a wide order? A little lame attempt at humor. Okay, I tried.
I got it. It's not too late.
For that reason, I just want to say that I do not think that this request is in response to a hardship unique to a parcel. I would support a zoning ordinance amendment. And then just my final comment on the buffer yard. This variance request seems very reasonable, and the hardship is that the plantings will not survive, and we have, I don't want to say expert testimony, but we do have expert feedback on that.
Do you want to answer his question?
So,
Albeit a
because
little bit convoluted.
since we already voted on the zoning ordinance amendment, I think that I don't think we can change the vote at this point. Of the three, potentially the side setback could be addressed with an additional text amendment in our zoning ordinance amendment for the project. Again, the route the applicant has chosen was based on council feedback. So I think at this point, it would be fine for the commission to say that they support which variances are supported, which ones aren't, and it could be a recommendation for the applicant to proceed with the zoning ordinance amendment, and then council can keep that in consideration. But yeah, as far as what the zoning ordinance amendment would look like, setbacks could be addressed in RSF 3 district standards. The garage maximum would actually have to be a change to RSF 1, because that's where the architectural standards are outlined for all urban residential districts. And then the buffer yard, if that were to be a zoning ordinance amendment, that would have to be a change to our landscaping performance standards. So we would have to do a new public hearing for the garage maximum buffer yard because that section of code was not noticed.
Well, I guess, I'm fine with the buffer yards. So, do we have any discussion on the buffer yard?
No. I do, but that's just because how do forests grow? It's dense trees, and
Straight up and narrow trees.
I do understand that when you have mature trees, they are going to take most of the light from what it is she's planting. So I can understand the landscape comment. I just feel like so much changes when development comes in, because even the removal of trees changes the way the wind moves through there. And so it could really harm, the trees that have been there for a really long time. So I just find that I would rather stick with the implementation of denying that variance.
How about
Of the
if they-
buffer yard variant, which
The-
variance?
The landscape, yeah, which is the buffer yard.
So the landscape variance, I can understand that you wouldn't want to plant a tall tree there because it's going to try to lean away from the wooded area that's already there, but you could require understory trees there, and they're very attractive, and, they're high enough to be a
It would
visual
still be a
block.
variance though, because of how many overstory trees are required for a buffer yard ordinance formula.
I would, if there's a way to say, put in understories instead of overstories, I guess that would be a good solution to it, and it would be attractive. I don't know if that's possible.
Although a variance, I think that's a good idea, that's similar to.
The problem with relying on existing trees also, there's a lot of ash trees that are dying right now. Large overstory trees. We have dozens of them just on our 5-acre property that will be gone in a matter of years. They've been debarked this winter by the pileated woodpeckers.
Well, I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the buffer yard variance. Can I get a second?
Is that for landscaping also?
I
Or is it
have,
just the 7.5 foot?
no, I think the 7.5 foot is the side setback.
That's a size.
I made
The buffer
I
is the
made
landscape.
a motion to approve the variance with respect to the buffer yards. And it's based on the fact that he has a landscaping expert who said that plantings may not survive. I don't want to force someone to pay for plantings that we've been told are going to die by an expert.
Does the city have a natural expert, or is this in the engineering memo, or do we have any validation of that? Not to say it's not correct, I'm just, what's our other external opinion on this? Do we have one?
We don't have a landscape architect. Staff at the city, Landform does have a landscape architect that we can get an opinion from. My understanding is that the city that the ordinance was taken from has said that there's been problems with the trees' long-term viability.
My concern is that we're taking the developer's opinion, and I would prefer not to do that.
So then what is the solution? For if there is, because again, I don't want to make somebody pay for something that's going to die, although that is happening regardless of whether it's because of the competition for trees. Like, it just sometimes happens, right? And so my understanding is that as long as the developer still has the management of the property, they're responsible for replacing that. Once it's gone to the homeowners association, then that responsibility is dispelled to replace anything that dies. Am I
Yeah,
correct?
for the property owner, so the trees that are in the buffer yard don't necessarily need to be in an outlot, they can be on a lot.
Yep.
So it'd either be the property owner, depending on how it's broken up. So it looks like some of it would be, some of it's on lots, so I don't think it would be necessarily the HOA, but individual property owners required eventually to replace trees that have died.
If we deny it, are there other options for them to meet that requirement that might be more flexible, other than planting trees where they're going to not, where they won't thrive?
So there are a couple options within the ordinance to have different, like if there's a fence, then there's less landscaping required. Also, there is some flexibility if the area has been deemed an existing wooded area, then they can be exempt from the buffer yard ordinance. It seems like it could potentially apply here, probably better than a variance. And I think the long-term solution would be a zoning ordinance amendment to reevaluate the number of trees we're requiring in these buffer yards.
So I do have a pending motion to approve the variance. Is there a second? Hearing no second, is there someone else who's going to make a motion?
So the proposal from staff was to move forward by just saying that the existing wooded areas would qualify for buffering, correct? And then denying the variance. Okay, so I'm in favor of that one. However, I just want to I want to run something by you. We had the self-storage place right at the edge of Greenfield. And there was the question about counting landscaping that was on someone else's property as a part of this buffer zone. And I just want to make sure that all of a sudden we're not finding ourselves here in contradiction of what the outcome of that decision was.
I think we are very close.
Very close to contradicting
We're running into
ourselves.
the same issue, yes.
Okay, and will you remind us if you remember what the solution, the ultimate decision in that by council was made, or unless you guys remember?
I believe we told them to either apply for, I can't remember now. I think it was either to apply for an actual variance, because maybe they brought it up too late in the application, or a zoning ordinance amendment. That was something that was discussed. I think it was discussed, but they hadn't applied for a variance when it came in front of you, and it was too late to add it in. And so instead of having council adopt something on the fly or try to provide flexibility on the fly that didn't fit within our code, they're like either apply for a variance or some kind of zoning ordinance amendment, or they need to proceed with the buffer yard as required. So yeah, it's a little tricky.
So in this scenario, for us to not contradict ourselves, what is the best course of action moving forward?
The applicant needs to plant the buffer yard as required.
Okay, so then I would make a motion to approve the two variances for the 7.5 side yard setback on either side, the garage percentage, and then deny the buffer yard variance.
Can I add one comment? If we're going to all three now.
Sure. Oh, yeah, for sure. I can pull my motion. I pull my motion for further discussion.
Okay, regarding the garage, I think it's awesome that the second story, I think that's good. Staff removed or recommended to not require or take them up on the offer of the 30-foot setback. I would say that's a public benefit. I don't know why we don't take them up on it. Yeah.
If you remember, if I can just add something, if you remember early in my presentation, I said I made a mistake. I was all confused about the 20s and 25. I really do want 25 for everything. The narrative says 30. My preference was be to stick with 25 for everything. So the 25 is a 5-foot
Increase from what's required.
From what's required. So my preference, and if I can amend my narrative, I'd say 25 feet, not 30 feet.
Oh, come on. 5 more feet.
Although to say if you took it from the front, or if you added it to the front, you're just taking it from the back. And as a resident, I think most people would prefer a larger backyard than a front yard.
Okay, so we have 25 feet within our current as proposed. Okay.
So to keep things moving, I will make a motion to recommend denial of the buffer yards. Can I get a second?
Second.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. That passes.
Does that include the two variances that we're approving, or do you need to make a separate motion for that?
No, there'll be 2
Okay.
more motions coming up. I'd like to, does anyone want to make a motion on the side setback?
I would make a motion to approve the side setback to 7.5 feet, the variance, and you don't want me to throw in the garages at the same time? You want to keep them separate?
We'll keep them separate.
Throw it in.
Okay.
Throw it in.
All right, that's my motion. Anybody
Okay,
second?
I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
1 nay. Anyone want to make a motion with respect to the garage door area? I'll make a motion. I'm gonna agree with staff that this does not seem to meet the variance standard, so I'm going to make a motion to deny the garage door area percentage. Can I get a second?
Second?
All in favor of denial, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Okay.
So we need an affirmative motion though, to recommend approval, if that was 2-3, unless I got the numbers wrong.
Do you want to make it?
Well, I
Wait,
think it
I'm sorry,
was
what is it?
3-2.
Is it 3-2? Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it was a nay.
Yeah, it was 3-2 to deny the garage door area variance.
Did you vote nay?
I voted nay.
Okay, so if you voted nay to deny, for a motion to deny,
Yep.
recommend denial, then that means that you
Are in favor of
are in
approving the
favor of
variance.
approving the variance.
I understand that.
Okay, so then it was, okay, so you.
Then
vote-
what you're saying is someone needs to make an affirmative so that it can go forward.
Yes.
So I make a motion to approve the variance for the garage percentage.
I second.
Wait, what just happened here?
I'm sorry, did you?
We have 3 votes.
Yeah, we were outnumbered.
3
Oh, we
votes
were?
to
Okay.
deny.
Okay, I apologize if I got the numbers wrong.
To
Yeah.
approve.
Sorry, that was my bad too. I thought I heard
I
three
thought I
nays.
heard 3 say nay, so that's why I apologize.
Okay, can we take a poll? I'm a
By
nay.
hands.
You're,
Nay, nay.
Okay.
3 nays, 2.
oh, on the second
2
motion now?
yays.
No,
Okay.
so I apologize.
Let's go back to the
I-
first one.
Yeah, it's my, I heard 3 nays, there were only 2
We were
nays.
outvoted.
So it's my.
We
Yes.
were outvoted,
Yes, we were.
correct.
So, all right.
Okay, so with that, I'm gonna make a motion, oh, wait, we still have some more stuff to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just give me a second. Natalie, I've misplaced my little, oh, here we go. All right, and Natalie, you removed, I think we're on 8A, you've you have removed 8A, correct?
8AI, yep, correct, and we have no other business.
Okay, no other business. We have 2 representatives here from city council. Any,
Are you done with them?
yeah, we're all done.
All right.
Thanks for coming out. Thank you for your feedback.
I'm sorry I interrupted.
That's okay. Any reports or anything? I know usually we ask questions of you.
There was a staff report, wasn't there? If there's anything on the staff report you want us to talk about, otherwise.
I think-
There isn't a staff report, it's just
I
a
don't
planning
think
project
there is.
update,
Oh,
but not a council report.
okay. I don't know if there's any,
You guys got any questions for us, is usually what I ask you guys.
Absolutely not.
Yes.
Could I say a couple things?
Please, yeah.
I hope that the planning commission is paying attention to the things that are happening in the legislature right
Yes.
now. There's a lot of big deal things that are gonna have serious implications for Corcoran. And so if you don't know what I'm talking about, please check into it, because there's at least 3 bills on the floor right now, and they're trying to do an omnibus bill that is really gonna change the way that development happens in this community. And so, if you have thoughts on how that impacts you, I encourage you to contact your other elected officials and make those thoughts known.
If I could, so I wrote a letter to members of city council about this. I sent them to our elected officials. I sent them to the Star Tribune. My comments are being republished on Sunday in the Star Tribune. I am very disappointed in every one of our elected officials because the only response I got from anyone was from the Star Tribune.
Oh,
Not even the canned response that you get when you just submit an email?
Not even the canned response.
Okay.
So essentially, the state wants to strip local government of their right to determine what their cities are going to look like moving forward. So,
Mr. Chair, I do want to clarify that when he's speaking about elected officials, he's talking about those that are on the committee. I met with Senator Limmer, and I met with Representative Robbins when I was at the Capitol on Thursday. And they are both understanding of Corcoran's situation and supportive of our position.
then tell them to respond to emails from their constituents.
Fair enough. But I just want to make sure that you're keeping a pulse on it. There's going to be another hearing that happens on Thursday. That's the next one. It was going until 3:30 today. The next hearing, it's going to go to State and City and Veterans Committee. Yeah, that's the name of the committee. It's a weird one. That's the next hearing that's happening for some of those bills. And please pay attention to it, because there's going to be very serious implications for us. And they're trying to backdate it so it becomes immediate. So sometimes these bills, we have time as city staff to try and prepare.
Manage the change.
And if these changes really happen, it's going to be swift, and it's going to be huge.
Is it possible, because you meet with them, I mean, they won't even return my emails. Is it possible for you to ask, just a yes or no, have they received, or have they been influenced by lobbyists?
So I will say I asked, not quite that point blank, but I asked that question as it pertained to their positions. And one of the responses that I got is they're making an intentional choice to kind of distance themselves in order to maintain objectivity. That was the response that I got.
You know, because when I spoke with the Star Tribune reporter, he said that they acknowledged that they have been contacted and heavily lobbied by the developer lobbyists. So I'm surprised to hear this.
It's all being pushed under the false pretense of affordable housing.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, you're exactly right. Well, you know, we're just not smart enough to govern ourselves.
Yeah. And now they're looping back. One of the big gaps in the proposals didn't deal with the realities of some of the utilities infrastructure, who pays for it, what are capacities, those sorts of things. They're now trying to talk about that. But I understand why it makes a lot of sense for some of the communities inside the 494 loop.
Correct.
As they're trying to address it. It doesn't take into consideration those of us outside of the 494 loop and the fact that responsible development is happening. There's good discussions, people can agree or disagree with the decisions that are happening, but conscientious choices made by elected representatives or appointed representatives within our communities. To take that away for people who have no idea what's going on in Corcoran or any of our neighbors is irresponsible.
And before we adjourn, that was the best application I've read since my time here.
Well, I only put a little bit together, she did all the.
Well, it was, because I'll tell you what, it was nice having an application that just checked the boxes without asking for 100, different concessions. And I appreciated that, so.
May I ask one update of city council? What is,
Lindsay was first.
You
Oh,
go first,
no,
you go first.
go ahead.
No, please.
I'm just giving you grief.
I just want an update on what is the status of the organics recycling program? Because I know that they are in discussion, and I know that one company chose to charge, right, and the other didn't, and so I just want an update, because I know the city clerk was working on that.
So I'll respond because council's
Awesome.
waiting for the same thing for me. So our staffer that was handling that action, has been out of the office, and so I will be getting an update later this week and trying to provide an update. I was hoping to provide them an update at the council meeting on Thursday. I simply don't, I'm doing the work of like 4 people right now.
Sure.
So the reality is, we hear it, I've gotten calls, it's very important, I just haven't been able to, and I don't have anyone else to action on it right now.
I've called
Oh,
Republic,
I have to.
and I've been extremely clear from a council member's position that they're wrong for what's written in the law, in whatever, that as long as we have a centralized area, nobody, they can't charge the whole group. If somebody asks for containers, they can charge. And the person was not the person I wanted to talk to. They gave me the administrative phone number, and our administrator has to make the call. They won't talk to anybody else. So I tried as far as a council member goes. And if y'all want to know, I'll say it. I told them straight up, curbside will not charge you. Republic does. And that's the stance right now. So.
And that's probably the only way it's gonna change.
Yeah. Before we adjourn, I have.
Well, she had a question,
Lindsay
and I
had-
interrupted her,
Oh,
I'm
I'm sorry.
sorry.
Go ahead.
All right, go
I'm not sure if this is the forum, actually, so I'm gonna pass.
Oh, come on.
I am,
Okay, fine, let's do it. I'm interested in thoughts, because I feel like I beat a dead horse on this every meeting, and I'm sorry. Maybe it's why I'm here. We're at such a crucial time right now, as our mayor said, over the next 12 months, the decisions we make. I'm gravely concerned about precedents, and the whole community church passed, okay, referenced in that, you know, the precedents of prior PUDs. I'm curious what the council's perspective is, or maybe it's yours, and if this is a controversial question, you don't have to answer it. But what's the stance on, you know, what precedents, how we revert from setting some sort of precedence of accepting setbacks and variances without significant reasoning? Or like, what's the perspective on PUD applications going forward, and how are we going to work with precedents that's going to be continually building?
Either one of us can. I need more specifics, Lindsay. What precedents have we set, or you feel?
Well, I'm just talking about setbacks.
Well, I'll give you a general answer.
Okay,
could we adjourn?
yeah, that's why maybe I paused.
Yeah, we can adjourn. I mean, I'll give you my personal opinion, because I can't speak for the council.
Sure.
But PUDs are negotiated instruments. So there really is no precedence. They're all different. Everyone is different. Everyone is negotiated. And we've had discussions on variances in the past. Variances don't set precedences either. So
Okay.
I wouldn't worry about precedences as much.
We don't think there's legal risk?
They're all
Not for a
negotiated.
PUD, no. So there's a very limited window where a variance might set precedence if a similarly situated application in time, location, and conditions. So if it's very similar, then arguably there might be some precedence. But the city is allowed to learn from previous decisions. Say that we did it that time, it didn't work, we don't want to do it anymore. But like, for example, if one house came in and got a setback variance to put on a deck, and then another house that had the same conditions comes in 2 months later, it would probably be a little
Right,
difficult
right.
to deny that.
But PUDs specifically, then
Yeah,
there's
but
no
for
legal
PUDs,
risk?
No, there's,
Okay.
no, we're able to negotiate public benefits and then the flexibilities on a case-by-case basis.
But even a deck variance, they have to prove a hardship, right? And there has to be a similar hardship to consider precedent.
Exactly, so it's just very important that the findings of fact and our variances are unique, so to avoid setting a precedent, or having something look like a precedent could be set, so.
Thank you.
April 25th, I am currently scheduled to be the city council liaison. I will be in Delaware that day and unavailable. Is there anyone willing to swap days with me?
I think I can, just let me check. Or maybe not swap, I think I owe you.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah, I think I
all
owe
right.
you.
Well, let's see.
Natalie, can you speak to April's meeting at all in terms of lightness or heaviness?
I'll take
Multiple.
The public hearing notice is going out this week are for
Okay.
PUD, of the Chastity property, which is off of Maple
Yep.
Hill in near
Middle,
Corcoran.
yep.
And then a CUP for a garage
Okay.
sidewall, I think is what it is, right? Sidewall? Yeah.
It's like the third this
So
year,
we'll
you
put that
guys.
one
That
first,
is
and we'll
the
set ourselves
third.
up for success on that meeting.
Okay, thank you.
I'll
Appreciate
take-
it.
Lantern, I'll take it.
Thank you.
Yep.
And then
And
you'll
let's
have two
see,
back-to-back together.
Commissioner Kazicki, am I
I'm sorry,
pronouncing?
I didn't take mine.
Okay.
Kazicki?
It was back.
So I see that you're scheduled for the April 11th city council meeting. I'll be in attendance as well. Commissioner Brunman,
Yep, I'll
do
be
you
there.
intend?
Assuming that all works, yes, I
Okay.
intend.
Okay. Well, with that, can I get a
Yes.
motion to adjourn?
I will make that motion.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? Thank you. We're done.
Okay.